So to all of you that are here with the association today, thank you for coming and participating. I know you've had 2 days worth of drinking from a fire hose, and I'm the last drip. So I'm going to do my best to have a little yell leader zeal and to talk about what I think is important as this next session rolls around and some of the issues that we ought to be talking about. And I'm so glad that there is a group like you, because y'all's is a collective voice that needs to be heard, and not just in Austin, Texas, but around this state. And God knows they could use it in Washington, D.C. too. But when the 81st session of the legislature kicks off here, right after the first of the year, the House and Senate is going to be balancing some very unique opportunities and John, some unique challenges for those of you number crunchers that are over there in the legislature as well, as we start considering the state's course over the next 2 years that we will deal with the budget. And on one hand, there are going to be folks that are tempted to look at those resources that are flowing into the state, and they're going to talk about the remarkable economic health that we find ourselves in, and there are going to be some folks that want to spend that money. And there's a lot of great programs, a lot of great ideas that are going to come forth, but there's going to be this almost overpowering desire to go spend that money on these programs. And on the other hand, we're dealing with two very significant storms, I think, are good ways to describe both of them, both Hurricane Ike and the financial market crises that we face. The two storms that have rattled over this state over the course of the last 30-plus days, and Ike, that weather system that impacted a substantial part of the Gulf Coast, it hammered our coastal area. It took lives, it devastated homes, it crushed businesses. I mean, this was an amazingly powerful and impactful storm. For more than a month now, the folks of Southeast Texas have been digging out from under Ike's damage, and we're still waiting to find out, Cindy, what the total economic impact is going to be. But the fact is, no matter how much financial aid we get from the federal government, how thoroughly the insurers fulfill their responsibilities, or what resources families and businesses put into rebuild, this storm's going to be with us for a while. The impact of it's going to be felt for a spell. And if that's not enough, a storm of a substantially different nature, but just as impactful, and I'm talking about that financial storm roared in, after, the fact is, David, after years of irresponsible borrowing and lending, our nation's credit markets essentially imploded and left the American people holding the bag. Now, there may be a differing opinion or two in this audience, I don't know, on whether or not Congress should have been handing out our hard-earned tax dollars to a bunch of mismanaged corporations, basically insulating them from the consequences of their bad judgment. There may be some of you that think that was a okay idea. But I suspect that every one of you in here will agree that that $700 billion corporate bailout isn't exactly an example of free market at work. No matter what you think of that bailout, the truth remains that this financial storm of the financial type has left credit very, very tight. And starting next week, I'm going to be actually starting this week. I've already been to Dallas, sitting down with some business groups and visiting with them. But I'm talking to business groups around the state to find out just, what do they find at their current situation? What's happening on your sales floor? What are your receipts? What are those accounts doing out there? How is this financial crisis affecting them specifically, and as a whole, our state? people like you are having to tighten your belts. I mean, we're not an island. We are being impacted by what's going on internationally and nationally. You know, you're cutting spending. You're drawing down in a lot of cases. You're exercising greater discipline, taking a closer look at the difference between a want and a need. In times like this, state government shouldn't be a bit different. That's why I've asked the heads of those executive agencies and the appointees that I've had the privilege to make, I want them to cut discretionary spending from their budgets as they can. I've directed them to start curtailing taxpayer-funded travel. Ask them to get back to me on the other cuts that they're going to make for the remainder of the fiscal year. And as they think about cutting those expenditures, I want them to start using their budgetary scaffold. I want this to start a dialogue. I want it to create a momentum as we head into the next session, because we're going to need that type of thoughtful approach, John. If we're going to continue the good stewardship of taxpayers' money that we've had for the last 5 or 6 years, we're going to need state agencies, particularly at this point in time. I'm not sure there has been a more important time in our last 6 years than right now to be thoughtful about the spending, to look at ways to reduce discretionary dollars. And I think back, you know, Donna, in 2003, when we came here and we faced a $10 billion budget deficit, and there's been some really good stewardship that's occurred over the last 5 years. We reduced our spending in 2003, and we could have taken the easy way out, I think short-term easy way out, and said, oh gosh, we just didn't know it was going to be that big. And we didn't. Comptroller told us it was a $5 billion, and then kind of pulled the old trick of, oh, it was twice that big. It was $10 billion budget deficit. So the fact is, we not only addressed a budget surplus of historic size, we also passed tort reform that allowed businesses to continue to stay in the state, doctors to continue practicing medicine. We've also advocated a regulatory environment that's predictable and reasonable. We worked hard in 2006 to cut property taxes in the state. As a result of those decisions that have been made since 2003 in particular, our state's economy is better equipped than any other to handle these twin storms that have roiled the seas around us